slavery, and that he promised that he would not forget it. Evoking FDR's famous Forgotten Man speech from 1932 that promised to prioritize the needs of, quote, the man at the bottom of the economic pyramid, Trump declared, quote, the forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. Politicians had prospered, he said, but jobs had evaporated, factories closed. Quote, the establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. And while they celebrated in our nation's capital, there was little chance to celebrate for struggling families all across our land. This all changes, starting right here and right now, Trump proclaimed, because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you. This is your day. This is your celebration. End of quote. The moment, however, belonged not to the great mass of struggling Americans, but to the new president's most ardent supporters, flamboyant businessmen who profited off the pain of the housing bust and were now poised to steer the ship of state for at least the next 4 years. As Trump reached out his hand and swore to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, his close friend and inaugural committee chair, Tom Barrack, stood behind him, smiling in a blue scarf and black overcoat. Afterward, Barrack and Trump embraced at the U.S. Capitol's inaugural platform. The homewreckers had arrived. Barrack didn't take an official position in the Trump administration, reportedly turning down an offer to be White House Chief of Staff, Treasury Secretary, or Ambassador to Mexico. Roger Stone told me he could have had any position he wanted, but working for the government would have meant making a lot less money. I don't think he has the belly for public service, Stone observed. Other homewreckers had no such qualms. If they changed the rules of the game now, they could make more money later. Steve Mnuchin, by now dubbed the foreclosure king by his critics, was confirmed as Treasury Secretary. His top deputy at One West, the bank, Joseph Otting, became the nation's chief bank regulator, the comptroller of the currency. Wilbur Ross, the bankruptcy tycoon who bought Florida's Bank United, became the Commerce Secretary, charged with everything from negotiating trade deals to overseeing the U.S. Census. Steve Schwarzman, the chairman of Blackstone, became chair of the White House's Strategic and Policy Forum, a group of business leaders who were to meet regularly with Trump. Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan Chase was named vice chair. Though the group disbanded over the summer after Trump's statement that bigotry and violence on many sides were responsible for a white nationalist's killing a counter-protester in Charlottesville, Virginia, Schwarzman, along with Barrack, is said to be among a small group of outsiders, including Sean Hannity, who are put directly through to the president rather than being routed through the normal communications channels. Hannity reportedly chats with Trump nightly. Schwarzman has flown on Air Force One. On February 12, 2017, less than a month into Trump's presidency, while the commander-in-chief was dining with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan at his Mar-a-Lago golf club, Schwarzman threw a massive 70th birthday bash at his Four Winds estate, barely a mile and a half away. This time, neither Donald...
This is kind of crazy stuff, but who knows? Flying saucers, for example, to actual science denial, conspiracy theories that actually serve to promote the interests of a particular industry or wealthy individuals, to the totally crazy stuff, the flat earth, the reptilian overlords, and all that kind of thing, conspiracy theories that can do tremendous damage. And, one of those being one of the conspiracy theories that, brought two Republicans into Congress this year. So anyhow, I lay the whole thing out with a new video for our supporters over at ThomHartmann.com. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you and Ron in Louisville, Kentucky. Hey, Ron, what's on your mind today?
Hey, I wanted to talk a little bit about some comments you made about rural America not knowing better than to support Democrats a while back. And I happen to be very frustrated living in a city in the Midwest that's surrounded by rural territory, and the complete disregard that people in the city seem to have for the plight of rural people. And I have to say that I don't think the Democrats have done too much for them recently. NAFTA really hurt rural people when Biden was running for president.
You realize NAFTA was negotiated by Ronald Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush.
Right, but when Clinton was in office, he pushed it through, and he used a lot of his political. He used a lot of political capital to help it too.
I agree with you, but it was a Republican program. NAFTA was a Republican
program, but the neoliberal Democrats like Clinton supported it also. Plus, now we've got Biden, and believe me, I really think that Biden has made some progressive picks for a lot of positions. I'm really generally pretty happy with a number of things Biden has done so far, and I'm a big critic of neoliberalism. But he did during his campaign. He said he would not ban fracking no matter what. And he also
that was no, he didn't say he wouldn't ban fracking. He said he wasn't going to ban fracking under. There was a specific caveat, and I don't recall. I was going to say I think it might have been on federal lands, but I'm pretty sure that was not the case. It was a narrow area where he was saying he was not going to ban fracking, and that had to do with what was going on in Pennsylvania.
I thought that was general.
Ron, did you just call to basically trash Biden? And I mean, is that why you're on the phone?
No, again, as I said, I have a lot of praise for a number of his. He's been much more progressive than I thought. As a matter of fact, for example, I like the fact that Biden really kind of pushed the COVID bill through without trying to, which would have been very unsuccessful, to get some Republicans along. They had no intention of going along, and so he used the reconciliation to get using the reconciliation.
He hasn't finished it yet. He hasn't finished it yet.
He's working on it. But
I still don't get your bottom line here. I mean, Democrats brought electricity to rural areas through the REA, which was fought vigorously by the Republicans. Democrats brought telephone service to the rural areas through the RTA, which was fought vigorously by Republicans. Democrats created the Agriculture Department, which was fought by Republicans, which worked to provide farm price supports. Democrats pushed through food stamps, which in some way, and the federal food surplus programs, which helped stabilize particularly dairy product prices. That was again fought by Republicans. What specifically is it that Republicans are doing for rural people that Democrats aren't? What am I missing here?
Well, the Democrats aren't doing much for them now. I mean, all these things are...
No, what are Republicans doing for rural people that Democrats aren't? Can you name one Republican policy that's benefiting rural Americans?
I wish if the Democrats want them to vote for them, then they should be doing things for them instead of just pointing to the Republicans and saying, well, they're worse. I mean, if you're
well, they're trying to get COVID relief for people. That's going to hit rural people just as well as it's going to hit people in cities. The Democrats are trying to raise the minimum wage. The minimum wage is a real thing in rural areas, just like it is in cities. Democrats are trying to provide health care to everybody in America at a low cost. Republicans have been fighting that tooth and nail since the 1930s, and that's going to help people in rural areas. Democrats are trying to keep rural hospitals open. Republicans have been trying to shut them down. Democrats have been working to try to get to upgrade our transportation system, particularly our rail systems around the country, and Republicans have been fighting them tooth and nail from the get-go on that. Ron, I'm not fine. You're not convincing me here.
Well, I have another thing, and that's the takeover. And again, the Democrats aren't protecting them from this. The takeover of factory farms that have just really devastated, and the pollution that comes from them. Democrats.
Well, that was Reagan's policy. That was in 1983 when Reagan stopped enforcing the antitrust laws, and specifically stopped enforcing them with regard to agriculture and agricultural land. And the big ag companies dropped right through the floor commodity prices for almost 2 years. As a consequence of that, you had farmers all across the Midwest going bankrupt and being wiped out. Willie Nelson and Johnny Cash and these guys were out there doing farm aid and trying to raise money for these farmers so they wouldn't lose their farms. But they got lost to these big combines anyway, who were all, in bed with the Republicans, ADM and all these other companies.
They get money from them, and they're not doing anything to reverse this. Well,
I'm not sure that that's true. I'm hearing the only voices I'm hearing in America who are saying, and I wrote a book about this a year ago, the hidden history of monopolies. I've been all over this issue, and the only voices I'm hearing in America who are saying that these giant monopolies that have destroyed family farms across America and are continuing to destroy family farms should not operate the way they are, in fact, shouldn't even exist the way they do, are Democratic voices. The Republicans are just fine with them. So, Ron, I'm going to move along, but thank you for the call. Rob, nice try. Rob in Mesa, Arizona. Hey, Rob, what's up?
Hi, yeah, I was going to call. Basically, I wanted to say that the Republicans are showing us exactly who they are. They're an organized crime party. If you look at them, they treat their members no differently than MS-13. You're either in the group or you're not. If you try to get out of the group, bad things happen to you. And so they're showing us who they are. And I wanted to give a couple defenses against past protests.
It's like a street gang. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. If you really look at them in that sense, it makes sense the way they're acting, because of course the two impeachment trials failed because you had these gang members on the jury. They're not going to vote to convict their own members. It just makes perfect sense. You can't do that. But the one thing I wanted to say about when Ted Cruz brought out there's people at these riots and last 4 years that was allowed. These same people that stormed the Capitol are the same people that went to these riots and tried to instigate the breaking of windows and fires. They're also documented as killing some police and trying to portray that on the right. And as far as unity, when people bring up unity, like the Republicans, this isn't about uniting America with the Republican Party. The Republican Party is out on a limb right now. They're showing their true colors. That's who they are. They need to just be not part of the conversation anymore. This is about uniting Americans, some of which used to be, traditional Republicans. So we do not need to, unity does not need to include the Republican Party anymore. That's the way I feel. I feel, none of this liberal stuff about, we need to bring everyone together. You can't bring
No, this is what happens. Every time the Republicans gain power, they're like, hey, elections have consequences, as St. Ronnie said. And, hey, screw your feelings, snowflake, and we're going to own the libs, Don Jr. says. And as soon as Republicans are out of power, it's like, oh, don't you guys want to work together? What happened to bipartisanship? We've got to have unity in America. Screw them, Bob. Screw them. Thank you for the call. Courtney in Brooklyn, New York. Hey, Courtney, what's on your mind?
Hey, good afternoon, Tom. I'm on the move here. Just want to point out Mitch McConnell talking out of both sides of his mouth, practically facilitating the acquittal of Donald Trump. And I also wanted to point out our prior comment. That was CNN I was watching, and it may or may not have been Bill Cassidy talking about coming back to the Republican Party coming back to Reaganism with the obvious fact that we were already caught up in Reaganism. And to another point, with one of your previous callers talked about climate change. That climate change is definitely a serious issue. And it needs to be spoken about. It's going to cause inter-migration, interstate migration of people because of the way climate change is drastically affecting the mostly rural and suburban geography in the United States of America. That the tragic pileup out there in Texas with the 160 cars, and over there in Oklahoma, these are mostly rural places.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, Courtney. And look at, 20-30% of the agricultural crop in the Midwest last year was wiped out by severe weather. And the Republicans are like, weather? There's there's nothing going on here. There's nothing to see. Democrats are out there saying we need to stop climate change so that these rural people with their agricultural base as an economic base don't continue getting wiped out. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
45 minutes past the hour. Back with more of your calls in just a moment. And welcome back. Leon in Maroa, Illinois. Hey, Leon, what's up?
Well, Tom, I heard you mention the postal board a while ago, and I didn't know how serious it was that the chances of getting rid of that board. I know DeJoy sounded like he's in position, but I've got 3 examples of slow mail, and I got tired of hearing the Republicans whine about the mail-in ballots. Back in August, our neighbor lives 3 houses from us, mailed my wife a birthday card. It took 10 days to get here, what normally would have taken 4 or 5. And about 3 weeks ago, my cousin who winters in Florida and my neighbor 7 houses from me both let us know that they received our Christmas card, and my wife mailed them out maybe 1-2 days after Thanksgiving.
Wow. Wow.
So,
see, this is what happens when you destroy 600 high-speed mail sorting machines all over the country.
Right. I'm going to call Dick Durbin maybe this afternoon, and maybe too late, but I'm going to put this message in his ear. I'm fed up with their whining about the mail-in ballots.
Yeah. Yeah, it's time to it's time to restore the Postal Service. I mean, if they can privatize and destroy the Postal Service, it helps them in terms of trying to fight mail-in ballots. Plus, it destroys the largest union in America. Plus, it slows down the possibility that the Postal Service might move away from fossil fuels for the largest individual vehicle fleet in the United States. Plus, they're going to get the Republican Party is going to get massive campaign contributions from, if they're not already, from FedEx and UPS if they can get the post office, their competitors, out of the way. So it's from their point of view, it's a win-win on all points. Leon, thank you for that. Max in Clackamas, Oregon. Hey, Max, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how you doing? Hey, I recently got my ham radio license last week, so I'm kind of into some tuned in, so to speak, to some odd news around the country. And one interesting piece of news is that